Hello, my name is Carrie Boan, and we are going to dive into the four pillars of mental wellness. So, we typically talk about the four pillars, and this is like the basis for your mental health. The brain has everything to do with your mental health. The brain is your mental health. It runs your thoughts, your words, your actions, your self talk, your emotions. Let's explore the four pillars today because I feel like the four pillars can be the foundation for you to build on every single thing, every single other speaker in this talk. The four pillars consist of biological, psychological, spiritual, and social. Let's start with the biological. Biological is the actual brain and the actual functioning of the brain, the health of your brain, the organ that we call the brain. Not a lot of people love to discuss the brain, right? We love to discuss the health of our bodies, the size of our bodies. Are we physically in shape? Are we a little bit overweight? Do we need to put on some more muscle? Are we active? We love to talk about the health of our bodies. But when we start to talk about the health of the actual brain, people shy away from it. And I don't know if that's because we actually can't see it. That is an organ that when a physician orders a test on your brain, we know we're looking for something specific, right? But the brain is so elaborate, it's really difficult to keep track of everything, right? Even when I went to college 20 plus years ago, 25, 26 years ago, even now, we've learned so much compared to what I learned way back in college. That's why we have to keep learning and expanding our knowledge, right? So, the biological health of our brain has to do with what we eat, how much we eat, our hydration levels, and our exercise, nutrition. Let's talk about the first one, basic. It's one of my favorite topics is how much hydration we give our brain. Our brain is 75 to 80% water. This is why if we start to become dehydrated, we feel like we're in a brain fog, or if we're drinking too much coffee, soda, anything with caffeine in, anything with too many energy drinks, we can start to feel the opposite of what we think we should feel. Water is necessary for healthy brain function. Everybody debates how much water is too much because it is possible to drink too much water and compromise your kidney function. So, a good rule of thumb that we've learned in the brain health arena is take your weight and divide it by 2. And that is your water recommendation in ounces. So let's say somebody weighs 140 pounds, divide that by 2, that's 70 ounces of water a day, spread out over a day. Now, sometimes I like to drink this with decaffeinated tea. If you make your tea with water. Now, coffee, you would have to drink decaf coffee, but that doesn't necessarily count towards your water consumption. But you can always take water and add lemon, or when I want to make sure that I have a good immune system, I add ginger and mint and lemon. there's things that you can add to water so that you're not just drinking plain water every day, all day. So water, hydration is very important to your brain. There's different waters that you can buy in the grocery store to enhance your water intake. If you do not hydrate properly, you will feel dizzy. You will not feel optimal. So you must stay hydrated. That is my number one thing. And I push it so much because I used to not be a water drinker. And as soon as I started my neural pathway and created my daily habit of drinking enough water every day, I started thinking clear and feeling better. So hydration, number one for biological brain health. Nutrition, what you put in your body affects how your brain functions. If you eat good, healthy protein and complex carbohydrates, it will fuel your brain more appropriately than sugars and nasty carbohydrates, carbohydrates that don't break down and overstimulate your brain. A lot of red dye, yellow dye, they actually have an effect on the brain. So nutrition, healthy proteins, healthy carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates are great for the brain. Sleep is another huge deal when we're talking about brain health, biological brain health. 8 hours of sleep, 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night is ideal. I realize not everybody can necessarily do that, but 6 to 8 hours of sleep, if you start to become sleep deprived, that actually has an effect on your brain health and your brain function. Also, exercise. Exercise every single day, whether it's taking a brisk walk, whether it's going to the gym, bike riding, fast walking. Exercise brings blood flow and oxygen to the brain. It is necessary for brain health. Not everybody is a gym goer. I don't love to go to the gym. My sons love to go to the gym. I love to exercise at home. I have kettlebells, I have free weights, but I'm also in the medical field. I'm also, and my background has been physical therapy for 23 years, so I know how to do that myself. Not everybody is a gym goer. I encourage you to get outside on nice days and take walks, take brisk walks, take long walks, ride your bike. Get outside and get exercise and get the blood flowing and oxygen to your brain. So, biological, our first pillar. We're going to stay hydrated. We're going to look at good nutrition, good fuel for our brain. We're going to make sure we get enough sleep on a daily basis and exercise. Those are the 4 points of biological wellness for your brain that I want you to write down and think about. Biological, first pillar. Second pillar, psychological. Psychological is the actual mental workings of your brain. So we have the biological, and that's, the synapses and the hydration, and is it functioning properly? The psychological is now the neural pathways that we've laid, how the brain's parts work to develop your thoughts and your words and your actions. Psychological. So what can we do to work on the psychological health of our brain? First, I really love journaling. And I'm sure a lot of you on this webinar have heard about journaling. Our brain, when we journal, when we write down in our journal using our handwriting, our brain recognizes that handwriting as our own. So everything we write in that journal, our brain owns. I always recommend that people journal first thing in the morning because there is amazing, amazing thoughts that come to us while we sleep. Write it down, make it plain on the tablet so the herald will run with it. There is a lot to that when we sleep. Our brain rests but also stays active. So when we first wake up in the morning, when we journal, when we get out all of those thoughts, it's so psychologically helpful to work through that in the morning. And then again at night, before we lay down, if you write all of those thoughts that bothered you all day, get them out on the paper. If you don't want anybody to see them, tear it out of the book, rip it up, throw it in the trash, rip it and shred it into a million pieces, whatever you want to do. But get those stressors out of your brain and onto the paper, journal it out to help your psychological wellness so you sleep better at night. See how that works? Journaling is underrated. I really encourage you to try it. There's no right or wrong to it when you write in a journal and get it out of your brain onto paper. It will help lay a foundation for your psychological wellness. Another thing I recommend is quiet time. People can call this whatever they want. They can call it meditation. They can call it quiet time. Many of us are fearful of quiet time by ourselves. Why? And I used to do this. So I'm owning this and I'm saying, I understand. A lot of us don't want to sit with the thoughts that come up when we're quiet in a room. That is why Netflix and social media is just up off the chart, because we don't have to think about our own issues, about our own thoughts. We don't have to sit with our own thoughts when we're watching Netflix, when we're on social media, scrolling through others' successes and failures. It takes our mind off of our own. Is it all bad to escape? No, but we do have to make intentional quiet time, meditation time, prayer time to be with our own thoughts and process them. It does seem difficult at first, but once you start a neural pathway, once you launch a habit into doing this, it becomes regular and you no longer get upset or fearful of sitting with your own thoughts. Quiet time. I encourage it. Psychological pillar of counseling. Counseling is one that used to be so, I want to say, stigmatized, and maybe it still is, but people are becoming more comfortable with reaching out for counseling. We know that we are not supposed to live this life alone. We are supposed to have many counselors. That's what the word says. We are supposed to have many counselors. We are not meant to do this life by ourselves. So when we start to struggle, or we have a loved one that starts to struggle, counseling is a great psychological pillar, foundation that we can add to help our psychological wellness, our thinking patterns, our neural pathways that we developed when we were young. To us, they're normal. To us, that's our normal way of thinking. But maybe it becomes skewed over years, and we need somebody from an outside source, whether it's a spiritual counselor or a completely focused educational counselor. Counseling is a big psychological piece that will add to your wellness, your mental wellness. The fourth pillar I want to add for psychological is professional help, psychiatry and psychology. There is a difference between the two. One can prescribe medication and one does not. But this is another stigmatized pillar of psychological wellness. we feel like if we reach out for psychological help, we're going to be labeled. That is no longer the case, and we need to open up the discussion of how appropriate it is, especially in today's society when we do have so much pushed on us from social media and society. Seeking psychological and psychiatric help is a key piece when it's necessary to build your psychological wellness. Seeking counseling and professional help can help us break emotional patterns that are not healthy for us and help us build healthy emotional patterns and thinking patterns. Lots of times when we start to develop these thinking patterns, we just go down a rabbit hole and we don't realize how toxic they can be to our psychological wellness. When you pull somebody in from the outside who is looking from your thought patterns and your emotional patterns from the outside, they can pinpoint because they're not in your thought process. They're looking at it from an outside in, and they can help you break toxic emotional and thinking patterns and help build healthy new ones. Psychological pillar: journaling, meditation, quiet time, counseling, and psychological or psychiatric help when you need it. The third pillar is the social pillar. How important is this? Our social wellness is a huge pillar in our mental wellness and our faith walk. Social pillar emotional intelligence is in my book number one. Now, I do coach on emotional intelligence, but this is because I experienced such trauma for so many years myself due to my emotional intelligence lack. Emotional intelligence is understanding our thoughts and our words and our actions and the impact they make in the moment. When you are in social settings, your emotional intelligence, your level in response to everybody else's level of emotional intelligence is key in your social mental wellness. For instance, on social media, you can see something that completely offends you and completely hurts you. And you have to explore that and know where it's coming from on your end and try to understand where it's coming from on the other end, even if you don't agree with it, because you have your own values and thoughts. Explore that emotional intelligence piece and learn how to respond to it appropriately or not at all. And that's just on social media. That's not even out in the real world. Emotional intelligence for your social wellness pillar is very important. Improving my emotional intelligence helped my life tremendously. And it's not a one and done. It's a daily, minute by minute process. Lots of times. We need to know what to say in the right moment if we say anything at all. Learn how to season our words so that they may be appealing to everyone, right? Emotional intelligence. Communication is a great social piece, a great pillar to build on in your social wellness. Communication via, look, we have text message, we have email, and we have phone, we have in-person talks. Your communication is a huge piece with your, that if you start to break down communication, if you start to withdraw, what do friends do? They start to worry about you. So learning how to communicate your thoughts, your words, your actions is a huge piece to your family, to your friends, to your coworkers. That can really support your mental wellness, right? Also, community, being involved in your community. A lot of times, I think many of us sort of withdraw from our community, especially with social media. And when we had COVID, a lot of us tended to withdraw from our community. Being involved in our community helps us build a part of our brains that produces oxytocin. And oxytocin makes us feel included and loved. And oxytocin is what happens when you're with family, with your mom and your dad and your children. Oxytocin is produced. Being in your community and building that oxytocin in your brain helps you feel included and also lets you know what's going on. You meet so many people when you're out and about volunteering and giving back in your community. It's very important to be involved in your community for your mental wellness. This is the social piece that is so important. Social, emotional intelligence, communication, community. This is a true pillar. I did want to mention social media. There's always two sides to social media. There's really great pieces where you can reach out and meet new people. This is the social piece. There's also the toxic side to it. That's a whole nother webinar, right? You can use social media as a social component, but do it with reserve. Guard your heart and your mind. The last pillar that I want to talk about is spiritual. Our spiritual wellness, our spiritual connection in our brain. The first item I want you to write down is reflection. Again, this is tied into quiet time. We have a spiritual piece, and this is why I really want to spend the last minutes I have on this spiritual pillar. We have a piece inside of us that no surgeon can open up and take out, right? We have surgeons that work on our heart and our brain, our lungs. Our soul is the piece that no surgeon can open up our brain and take out. That is our soul. I have a soul who is Carrie, and when I go in for surgeries, no surgeon is going to be able to open me up and find Carrie and remove that soul out of me. The part of the brain that processes these thoughts and emotions is the temporal lobe of the brain. The temporal lobe is kind of on the sides of the brain, if you will. The temporal lobe processes the spiritual part. Temporal lobe also processes words and facial expressions. Very important in our spiritual beings, right? When we get quiet and we start to think and we start to meditate and think about our thoughts, our words, and emotions, and our spiritual connection, I focus less on actual religion with anybody that, any crowds that I speak to. I don't want to focus on the religion as much as I do want to focus on that spiritual piece, our soul connecting with a higher power, our soul connecting with our earth, the infinite universe, the infinite intelligence that we can't see. Our spiritual piece in our brains, our temporal lobes, want to connect our soul with a higher level of intelligence. So reflecting is reflecting and again journaling on that spiritual piece and not being fearful of our emotions coming up or any thoughts that we may have or condemning any thoughts that we may have regarding the spiritual realm. Our spirituality brings us peace, and it is a foundation for the emotional intelligence. so we have a great connection to social. The next part I want to connect with, talk about on the spiritual piece is finding a place that you can connect with your spiritual side. Mine just happens to be the beach, and I don't live far from the beach. That's not by accident. Many people, when they go for walks in the woods, or they find a quiet place and read a book, you need to find a safe space for you. Maybe it's just in your home to connect with your spiritual piece, to connect with your soul, to connect with that part of you that the surgeons cannot remove. And process these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. When you put this all together, when you think about the parts of the brain, let's talk about the parts of the brain very briefly. Frontal lobe is the executive functioning lobe. That's the part that balances our checkbook, makes executive decisions. Temporal lobe processes this spiritual part of our brain, facial expressions, words. It processes what we hear. Occipital lobe and the parietal lobe, they process vision and actual speech. And the cerebellum in the back of the brain is all about activity. That's what controls our coordination and our actual physical movements. So those are the parts of the brain. So when we talk about our brain health and our brain interacting with our spiritual side, do you see how it all fits together? The biological is making sure that we stay hydrated, we feed our brain well, we get exercise, we get enough sleep. That sets the basis so that we can dive deeper into the psychological pillar, into the journaling, because if we don't feed our brain, if we don't exercise our brain, our frontal lobe is the first lobe to shut down, our executive functioning, and then we can make poor decisions. This is why focusing on your overall brain health is so important to your mental wellness and your spiritual side, your faith. Biological, hydrate, nutrition, sleep, and exercise. Psychological, journal, quiet time, meditation, whatever you would like to call it. Counseling when you need it, talking to a friend, you could even do that. Have a friend that you can count on. And psychological or psychiatric help when you need it. We're not meant to do the world by ourselves. Social pillar, emotional intelligence. Work on that emotional intelligence. There's so many free little webinars out there to work on it. Communication between friends, family, coworkers. Work on that communication piece. This is your temporal lobe again. The communication piece is your temporal lobe. Friends for support, get back into your community. Give back, it will build your oxytocin and help you feel included and loved. And the fourth pillar, spiritual. The temporal lobe, that's where you feel your faith, you find your soul. You want to make time for reflection. You want to own your spiritual values. You want to connect to that piece, get in your quiet space where you can connect to that piece that the surgeons cannot remove. That is you. That is your soul. Build those 4 pillars of mental wellness, and you will increase your peace and increase your faith. It will help you on a daily basis. This is not a one and done. This is a daily, minute by minute spiritual thing. Just start with one little thing. I challenge you to start with one little piece, even if it's just drinking water every day. Please reach out to me, Carrie Boan, Carrie at thebraindiva.com. If you need anything, I'm here to support you. Thank you.